I'm Anushka Shirali, serving as the project director for the center. Next slide, please. Other key members on this project include Brian Cohane, our project officer, Dr. Tracy Scott, and Liz Lembo from the Department of Education, and Sarah Frizzell, the project director at AIR. We are joined by several staff from both WestAT and AIR who will help to facilitate our session today. And thank you so much for everyone behind the scenes to make this session possible. Next slide, please. Can't believe that we're almost at the end of a 5-year contract. SEAC's fifth and final learning series of the year builds on our previous series that focuses on building capacity for student and family engagement with a focus on how districts can better integrate strategies, practices, and resources for engagement into a more comprehensive approach. We start the series by profiling how the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce and its attendance task force have created a comprehensive systems approach to addressing chronic absenteeism that incorporates student and family engagement as a central strategy of this effort. In session 2, we'll look at how Texas Education Agency has strengthened its approach to student engagement by integrating all the different elements of their out-of-school time programs. Finally, in session 3, we'll look at the Wisconsin Department of Education's public instruction partnership with the Department of Children and Families to build capacity at the district level to implement innovative school community partnerships. And next slide, please. Our objectives for today. The goal for the entire learning series is to understand how state-level support for student, family, and community engagement can play a critical role in boosting attendance, learn strategies for integrating engagement efforts into comprehensive approaches to address chronic absenteeism, and engage with participants in facilitated breakout groups to learn how their states and districts are using similar strategies. My colleague Boris is going to briefly go over the objectives for the first session of this learning series and give a high-level overview of the importance of integrating student and community engagement into initiatives aimed at addressing chronic absenteeism and improving school attendance. Boris?
Thanks, Anushka. And hi, everyone, and welcome. So for today, session 1 is going to focus on systems-level approaches, as well as the important role that student, family, and community engagement plays in those approaches. The goal of today's session is for participants to develop a clear understanding of the importance of student, family, and community engagement and how it can fit into a holistic systems-level approach to improving attendance and mitigating chronic absenteeism. In order to do that, we will examine Ohio's systems-level approach and their efforts to engage students and families within that broad approach. At the end of the session today, we'll have the opportunity to convene in small breakout groups to discuss Ohio's use of engagement strategies and how their experience can inform or validate the approaches used in your respective states and districts. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick look at the agenda today. As you can see, we're already into that first 10-minute segment of introduction to the learning series and the session. Then our presentation from our guest speakers from Ohio will take the next 25 minutes. We'll then move on to the breakout rooms, which should take about 20 minutes with possibly a few minutes left over for a whole group share out. And then we'll do a wrap up and next steps moving on to kind of what is coming up down the pipe. Next slide, please. So as a way of introducing this, we will talk about a systems approach, which is something that takes an all-encompassing look at identifying underlying causes and relationships that lead to chronic absenteeism, and also offers solutions at the state, district, and school levels. So here you can see an example of a systems approach to solving chronic absenteeism. States must be prepared to address chronic absence that is both widespread, that is affecting most of their schools and districts, as well as concentrated in specific school buildings and districts. So at the state level, this may include statewide campaigns and guidance that are relevant for most or all of schools and districts. Then kind of at the middle level of that pyramid, which is the district level, this includes focusing on districts that have high levels of chronic absenteeism, and that may include creating professional learning communities, creating specific programs that promote attendance and improve school climate, and also possibly creating cross-district teams to address attendance and kind of share ideas. Finally, at the top of the pyramid, which is the school level, this includes focusing on the lowest performing schools and providing intensive technical assistance, coaching, and assistance with designing and implementing school level initiatives. Ideally, all of these solutions are integrated within a state's system of school improvement and kind of are able to leverage existing and related initiatives such as expanded learning, tutoring, community schools, and other initiatives that can have an impact on attendance. Today's presenters are going to be sharing how they've used a similar systems approach in their work. Next slide, please. So the reason that these systems approaches are necessary is that because they collectively impact different underlying factors that can support attendance. As you can see from the diagram here, these include physical and emotional health and safety, belonging, connection, and support, academic challenge and engagement, and adult and student well-being and emotional competence. In the middle, central to all of these factors, are strong relationships between the school, students, and parents that can strengthen these positive conditions for learning. And key to building these relationships is how states, districts, and schools practice student and family engagement. So now we're going to hear an example of a state-led comprehensive approach to addressing chronic absenteeism. Ohio has adopted a systems level approach to improving attendance and mitigating chronic absenteeism that includes efforts to support community, student, and family engagement as one of its pillars. The effort that we're going to hear about was informed by recommendations from the state's attendance task force. The task force was made up of a diverse group of superintendents, community members, attendance experts, administrators, business leaders, juvenile court representatives, and engagement specialists. This task force emphasized the need to focus on prevention and early intervention. The approach, which we will learn more about in a minute, integrates student, family, and community engagement at all levels of intervention. So today, our speakers are here from Ohio to tell us more about the task force and how student, family, and community engagement fits within Ohio's student systems level approach. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, it is my pleasure to introduce and thank Jennifer Ruff and Patrick Hickman for presenting on Ohio's approach. Jennifer and Patrick work in the Office of Whole Child Supports within the Student and Academic Support section of the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. Jennifer is the Assistant Administrator of Safe and Supportive Schools, overseeing school climate and safety, PBIS, family engagement, and attendance. Patrick is Ohio's attendance advisor and specializes in helping folks navigate attendance law and best practices. Now we're going to turn it over to Patrick and Jennifer to introduce themselves and share more about Ohio's approach. Next slide.
Hi, yes, you can actually go to the next slide. So I'm Jennifer Ruff. I'm an assistant administrator of Safe and Supportive Schools in the Office of Whole Child Supports at the Department of Education and Workforce. And Patrick Hickman is our attendance advisor. He's one of the members on my team. So kind of to talk a little bit about our task force and introduce that. So while Ohio had been examining chronic absence prior to the pandemic, which was part of our ESSA plan, like many states, we actually began establishing partnerships before that. And coming out of the 2020-2021 school year, we realized that Ohio and schools and families really need additional support. And then we knew they needed even more support when chronic absenteeism began to rise during the 21-22 school year, which was the first year returning from remote and hybrid learning. So in 2023, the department convened a task force to help. So a part of this task force was created from schools and districts across the state, different community organizations and education supporters. And then that group was broken into subcommittees to kind of look at the different aspects of attendance, gather data from students and families, community and business partners, attendance experts, and data practitioners. So the goals of the task force was really to create a call to action for districts to begin to implement effective prevention and early intervention strategies instead of just focusing on tier 3 intervention and truancy. So it was really to promote a mindset shift from truancy to prevention and early intervention strategies. This task force provided feedback and input into the attendance guidance document and other tools created by attendance tools created with Ohio. They were available to identify barriers and solutions to implementing prevention and early intervention strategies and promote best practices for districts in Ohio and nationally. So we would share those success stories as part of our Future Forward Ohio, which is our state strategic plan. So overall, this group really has been able to develop strategies and tools for students and family engagement. And then as a department, we want to make sure that we're providing best practices across Ohio to meet regional needs. So offer a tiered support for each state, or a tiered support for each region in this state.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Patrick Hickman. I'm the attendance advisor at the Department of Education and Workforce, and as she said, I work with Jennifer. We're gonna just start with just giving a little bit of a context about Ohio. We are more than 2020 slang on the internet. We mean more than being weird or whatever it is the kids say about Ohio these days. But we do have a map of where we are in terms of chronic absence. We had this built by our data team as a heat map to show first kind of an overlay of all 88 counties in Ohio. And within all of our 88 counties are over 600 local public districts. And then in addition to those local public districts, which is what you see on this map here in all the different colors, there's also 335 community schools in Ohio. That it's our term for charter schools. It's a little different than how community school might look in other parts of the country. But so we have a lot of schools, and there's also non-public schools in addition to that. But this tool shows each district has a color associated with it using the code on the right there. And we have a link that will take you to our general support page where this map lives. But what I wanted to just show is there's significant differences in different areas of the state. So we have our big metropolis areas, and a lot of those are in the kind of the black areas where the chronic absenteeism rate is 40% or higher. And then a lot of where the band, if you follow the band of red from like the bottom central all the way up to the top right, that is all, believe it or not, Appalachia. That's the far western part of the Appalachian area. And so there are more counties and kind of places in that area that are more economically depressed and having more issues with economic things and access to resources, and also internet. Even high-speed internet in that area is hard or difficult to come by. And then we also have other parts of the state that we are digging into. That we see the dark blue and the light blue in the west part of the state that has a better chronic absence rate. And so those are more rural-ish areas. And so, we've done some work in talking with those folks, and we're continuing to do that work to try to understand more about what those areas are doing differently, or how their communities, are viewing why their attendance is better by comparison. So, as Jennifer said, we had a task force, and one of the things that the task force did, you'll see the full report. We'll have the link to that in the chat here. And the full report is very long, but there's a lot of really great information in there. But I just wanted to pull some quotes to show that of the groups that we talked to, we did talk to business community, we talked to other superintendents and school leaders, but we also talked to parents and we talked to students. And here are just some of the takeaways from those conversations. And so first is from a student: teachers need to make a strong effort to connect. It helps us notice that we would be missed, or knowing that it matters if we're not there. What I did was ask a group of students, what do adults in your life do to make you want to go to school? And also, what do adults in your life do or not do in your life that make you want to not go to school? And this was one of the comments that came up from a student that was echoed in a few different ways from other students too. But students notice and they care about the staff in the building. From a parent, families often receive a letter that threatens truancy charges before a team approach to problem solve is taken or a root cause is discovered. This puts families and schools against each other right out of the gate. And from the business community, attendance is the responsibility of the community. It means parents, administration, nurses, teachers, community organizations, healthcare. The only answer is that this is a collective response. So these are some of the takeaways from the overall task force that led to the recommendations. And I will show you'll see them in the link. If you look through the whole report, it's about halfway down the recommendations. The language that you'll see in the report is sort of sports oriented. And the reason for that is one of our partners in putting together the task force and gathering all the data was from our Stay in the Game network, which is a collaboration between the Cleveland Browns Foundation, Columbus Crew Foundation, Harvard Proving Ground, and us. And we have some more partners that are helping out as well. And we are working on kind of expanding a tier 1 communications plan for districts and schools to adopt or practice or modify on their own, provide some resources for folks who want to join kind of a statewide network to examine data at the state level, or sorry, at the school level, and make some shifts or recommendations based on that data. And so what I have here is just, they're the same recommendations, I just reworded them so that without all the context that's around the sports metaphor. But basically, attendance is everyone's responsibility. That's something that we maintain, and that's something that we talk about at the state. We want schools and districts and the community to know that one of the things that we need to do to increase attendance is to increase engagement and trust with our families and students. This is a really important piece to the puzzle. We also know that school needs to be a place where kids want to be. And I don't have enough room in this box, but when I talk to bigger audiences, I say, and also a place where parents want to send their kids. And this is an important piece as well. Schools and districts need resources and systems. They cannot do it by themselves. They need help. And that's to the business community's point. This is in everybody's wheelhouse. It's in everybody's best interest that attendance improves, that, academic skills, workforce skills, social skills, like all of those things that are taught benefits the work community and everyone else who lives in the school district area. And also we wanted to make sure that we examined what policies at the state level, and also encouraging schools and districts to examine their own local policies, what policies help and hinder attendance and might improve or help with chronic absenteeism. So those are the main recommendations. And we also had a tool that was developed before this, which was Ohio's Attendance Guide. We partnered with Attendance Works. The attendance guide has kind of 4 main sections, which you can see there. There's a kind of an overview of chronic absence, which we define, as most states do, as 10%, missing 10% or more of the school year. There's a section on understanding Ohio's laws, but the meat of the guide is sections for if you're a district leadership team and you want to look at attendance data and you want to be able to examine your own practices, policies, and things like that. A lot of questions to ask yourself as a team. What do we do for attendance in these different ways? I'll show some examples in the next slide. The second big section is the same kinds of questions, the same kind of setup, but for an individual school building. So a building leadership team can get together and talk about, if we want to examine ways to improve attendance, these are things that we do. So I just pulled some examples there are many questions to consider in the attendance guide, but these are just some that I pulled that kind of supported this idea of the importance of family engagement, family and community engagement, student engagement, and things like that. So for the district teams, asking questions like, what kind of data systems or dashboard do we have as a district? Like, how are we examining our attendance data? Are we promoting multi-tiered attendance strategies as a district? Is that something that we're encouraging all of our schools to do? And what, as a district, does our community and family engagement look like? Again, there are dozens of questions that are kind of put in categories in the guide. And then for building teams to examine, are we doing early student and family outreach? In Ohio, many schools have been in session for a few days or a week. And so, many schools we're examining what does it look like to get folks ready to come to school at the beginning? And then also, how do we make plans for when we have issues later? Because we know they will be there, right? We know chronic absence has been a problem for years. And we know this already, so we shouldn't be surprised, but we should have, tools at the ready for when it's time to implement those things. And that's also having a proactively engaging school climate in order to, well, yes, you're improving school climate, but you're also, decreasing the likelihood of having attendance issues because you have a place that people want to be and a place to send their kids. And we also have ways to ask for buildings to ask themselves about gathering qualitative data. So the attendance guide is really helpful. It has a lot of Ohio specific language, but I saw many of you from all across the country during the introduction. So I know that other schools would benefit from this. Feel free to take a look. And if you have questions about that, just let me know. But what we wanted to talk about, that was kind of the background of where we were with, understanding our problem ahead of time, understanding what the task force wanted and asked for, and then also, knowing that we as the state education agency, we are responsible for helping kind of enact all of these things, provide tools, and also, organize resources and things like that to help with chronic absence across the state. And so we kind of look at this as, what do we do for all schools? And in a kind of a tier 1 sense, as a state agency, what do we do for all schools and districts? And then we'll kind of decrease or I guess zoom in a little bit as we look at tier 2 and 3, like how we get a little bit more specific when there are deeper needs. So for one thing, the link that was in the chat that had the map, the heat map, is also the attendance support page. It has a handful of tools, including communication tools, data tools, and training tools that are all designed to be for public use if you're a district and you need some help with communicating, home about attendance concerns. We had a big shift in Ohio in about 8 years ago or so, where we shifted kind of from a punitive, legalistic truancy language to like trying to focus on having the schools play a bigger part. But the language that went along with schools playing a bigger part in attendance was around required hours to be in school, because we in Ohio do attendance by hours instead of by days or half days. And so there was a prescriptive number of hours that students could miss before they fall into certain categories. And many schools took those hours as, these are the thresholds for when we're going to communicate things, because that's what's required in state law. But then that became the focus for anything that schools did with attendance. So they only look at when they had to communicate, and not necessarily about communicating ahead of time preemptively for early intervention. And so we have some communication tools to help with that and help with the mindset shift that comes along with that. But having communication that is less legalese, because most parents, we know, just writing for busy readers, we know that folks don't really have time. And honestly, if you get a full length letter in the mail, what am I supposed to do with all this, right? There's just a lot of information. And so we just have like very clear, still editable, documents for folks to use that just says, we care about you. We are concerned about your attendance. Attendance matters. How can we help? Like, that's essentially what we're saying without going into all of the legal implications. So we have on that page, you'll see various tools for help with all those things. We have some upcoming training tools coming as well to help for building leadership to do their own professional development. That should be coming here in the next week or so on the site. So stay tuned if you are looking, or if you have more questions about training tools, you can reach out to me after this session. So then when we look at, we know what we're doing for everybody, what is it we need to do for more specific audiences? So we looked at risk districts when we had ESSER money to help with different projects. We looked at districts that had kind of a what we call like a chronic absence impact. So we took their enrollment, multiplied it by their chronic absence rate to get this measurement, right? So the more students who are, and with more students being chronically absent, there's a bigger, impact on, just the number of students in general in that district. And so, we did some partnering and some grant support for those districts. We implemented a student voice work group as a way to get, into a specific stakeholder group. Ohio has, in addition to the attendance advisor, which is what I do, we also have a family engagement coordinator. Letitia is awesome, and she, in addition to doing family engagement stuff, she also heads up our student voice work group. And so these students come together and talk about different points of interest that they want to talk about, like attendance, just like literacy and understanding that. Mental health is a big concern from the students too. And so there's a space that the state puts together, and then we use that data to help inform future work. And then we also, like I showed in the map, have regional trainings where we in Ohio have a couple of different groups who help school districts, some of which is regional by the state, and some of it is regional by what's in state law, where there's a kind of a county size-ish, maybe a little bit bigger group called an Education Service Center. And the Education Service Centers, along with the state support teams from the department, do a lot of regional work. And so they'll call us up and say, hey, we're going to be talking about attendance, can you come and talk? And so we do kind of more specialized, localized looks at attendance with these regions, or specific, like a shared interest. If it's not geography, it's also shared interest. Like we're putting on a conference for all building secretaries. Are one of our leadership administrations does that, and I went to go and talk to building secretaries about attendance, and knowing as a principal, like knowing what it is those folks' role is in the school, how to tailor that messaging and understand their needs and things like that. So that's how we do kind of that tier 2 look. And then for tier 3, this is like the most specific. So we have, Ohio's attendance advisor, that's my actual title. We have a lot of education program specialists. So my title is a little different, but so I have that is my dedicated job. I know that in other states, there are folks who do my job plus a lot of other things. This is just my role with attendance, and I work with a larger team with safe and supportive schools, and we collaborate a lot. But one of the things that I focus on, last year, we did weekly office hours for the first time. I had folks coming in and asking really specific questions. That was kind of its design. I think we're modifying it this school year to be a monthly kind of webinar series so that I have more specific messaging. There was a lot I learned about doing weekly office hours that were sort of intended as a drop-in versus a regular time for folks to learn and then ask questions. So if you have questions about starting up something like that, let me know. We also have a dedicated email and phone number just for attendance. So that's on our attendance support page too. If you clicked on that link, you saw it. That phone number is me. If you called it right now, well, I'd hear it ring, you probably wouldn't. And the email address I also answer as well. And I get questions because it's posted like that. I get questions from all over the country. Most of the people are in Ohio, but I do get people from out of state asking if we can locate a student, or they know the school in Ohio and they're concerned they're not going, and so they call and talk to me. So I provide that level of individual support for folks. But that also means sometimes I have to play the role of liaison or advocate. So I get a lot of phone calls from parents who are really frustrated with the ways that their school is communicating about attendance. I also get calls, it's rare, but it happens. I get calls from students who are trying to advocate for themselves, but they don't know how. And so they'll call and say, I'm trying to do this thing and it's affecting my attendance and my school doesn't understand or whatever. And so one of the things that I do in this role, as you know, because I'm an advisor, I take that really seriously, that role, to kind of advocate and liaise on behalf of the people who are reaching out to me, to then take it back to, because Ohio is a local control state and you know, we don't get involved in making decisions, but I do help the school, the district, the parent, the student, some cases the county courts or other community organizations understand what they can do, what they can't do, and how they can work together, communicate, and kind of broker, you know, some ideas. But my main goal when I do this is to listen, understand, make sure I really understand what the issues are. Here, I usually will call the district and understand both sides, and then give some ideas for some next steps about conversations they can have. And that is, you know, the kind of the most tier 3 issues that we help with. So that was a broad way of looking at all the things that we do in Ohio for attendance. You have access to a lot of supports and resources. My information is here. I'm really excited for y'all to get into breakouts. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to talk. It was great being with you all.
Patrick, thank you so much. That was excellent. There was one question in the chat that I thought you could answer probably pretty quickly before moving to the breakout rooms. The question was, how does Ohio define chronic absenteeism?
Yeah, when a student misses 10% or more of the school year, and that is by hours, not by days. So it's the individual school's calendar number of hours, and then if the student missed 10% of those hours based on their attendance, that student is chronically absent.
Great, thank you. And next slide, please, as we are going to move into the breakout groups. Actually, you can skip 2 slides ahead. Thank you. So we're going to break out into small groups of somewhere between 5 and 10 individuals. You'll be randomly assigned to a breakout room, so you should see an indication taking you to one. And then breakout room facilitators are going to use a Padlet to capture responses from the participants and to share various resources. You see the questions on here, they'll also kind of be repeated in the breakout rooms. So that is going to happen now. If you can, please turn on your camera for the breakout room discussion, just so that you can be more actively involved. And the breakout room invitations should pop up any minute now. Thanks everybody for really good discussions in the breakout groups. We wanted to kind of take take an opportunity to do a couple of quick share outs to see if there were any sort of common threads or interesting insights that came out. And I can start off with my breakout group, where we had a great discussion, a couple of really good examples from a number of states. One thing that was kind of highlighted from the Ohio presentation a lot was people were really interested in the heat map. So I'm going to kind of ask Patrick and Jennifer to, as we follow up, to sort of find some resources to how other states can create similar heat maps and how they came about, because people loved seeing the patterns of chronic absenteeism on their state maps. Another quote that I want to highlight that came out of our group was this idea of thinking of encouraging attendance not in terms of incentives, but just in terms of creating a space where kids want to go to school. And the quote that really stood out to me, and this came out of folks from Wisconsin and Pennsylvania separately, you'll be missed if you don't come to school. I absolutely love that sentiment. I think it's a great way to think about things rather than, you know, incentives or punishments or anything like that. So I like that very positive framework. So those are some of the things that stood out to me from my discussion. Does anybody else want to jump in from their breakout group?
Hi, Boris. This is Kristen. I was in breakout group 12. And one of the things for question number 2 is integrating student, family, and community engagement. One participant talked about how they use a translation service to be able to engage all folks within the community, to include students and families, because they have an upward of 10 languages used within the students and the immediate population. So just thinking about how to utilize the community or others to be able to translate to get families and students engaged.
Awesome. Thanks, KP. And please keep, I see some folks sharing resources in the chat. Please keep doing that. and or in the Padlet. We'll try to accumulate them all and share out in the follow-up email. I think we have time for maybe one more group to share if anybody has anything interesting that came up in their room.
Well, one of the things, I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, but definitely one of the things I saw as a common thread between ours, I think we were in breakout room 30, was the fact that a lot of us are looking at attendance works and some of those resources to kind of help build some of the resources and supports that we've used. I shared with my group what I thought was really great about what Ohio shared is the fact that you all have these virtual working hours. I think that's a great idea. And then you have a dedicated email address to where it looks like all of your questions regarding attendance go into one spot, which really kind of supports the development of an FAQ or guidance towards another document you all may be preparing. We actually have all of our email addresses in public domain for all staff, but I think that this is a really great idea to at least have a central hub, if you will, around this attendance piece. And then I told my group I would love to hear a little bit more around how you structure, and it may be another conversation, but how you all structure in Ohio those virtual hours, and then kind of like how do you set those agendas. But just wanted to share those tidbits. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it sounds like the Ohio presentation really had a lot of positive, a lot of follow-up. So as a wrap up, can we go to the next slide, please? So sort of just to call your attention to the upcoming 2 sessions in this learning series. We have 2 more coming up there a week from today and 2 weeks from today. Session 2 will be on creating a comprehensive approach to out-of-school programs to address chronic absenteeism. And the final learning session of the year will be building SEA and LEA capacity to develop school community partnerships. Next slide, please. And so the last thing is we love to hear your feedback. We want to know if the session met your needs and interests. And so with that in mind, we're going to drop a feedback link. There it is, a link in the chat, and also with this QR code, they go to the same place. So please fill it out and let us know how we did. And next slide, please, just to wrap things up. So as we mentioned, if you folks ask, we will follow up with an email that includes session slides and resources that were presented here, as well as some of the resources that have been presented, shared by you all. And then, of course, we are always here. You can always email SEAC's SEACenter at westat.com if you want to connect with subject matter experts and get kind of more immediate answers to your questions. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to our presenters from Ohio, and thanks to all of you for attending. Really appreciate it. And have a good rest of your day.